Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review for the Under the Never Sky trilogy by Veronica Rossi, consisting of Under the Never Sky, Through the Ever Night, and Into the Still Blue. As I said, this review will not have any spoilers in it, so I will only be talking about the synopsis for the first book, which is Under the Never Sky. Under the Never Sky is a fantasy, dystopian, science fiction trilogy. So the first book starts with our main character Arya, and she lives in the pods, which are a underground kind of enclosed civilization where a lot of people live now because outside it has turned basically deadly. There are all these kind of ether lightning storms and it's just hazardous. There's weird tribes of cannibals outside. It's just kind of nuts. So she lives in these pods, and within these pods is the science fiction part of the story. So they have smart eyes, which allow them to go into different realms, which are kind of like science fiction, video game-y type environments, so they don't really feel like they're living underground. It makes them happier. It's kind of society's solution to the underground problem. So one day, after a series of very unfortunate events, she finds herself outside in the very treacherous world that I previously described and comes into contact with our other main character, who is Perry. Perry is an outsider and he lives in the more fantasy realm. Like I said, there are tribes running around that are cannibalistic, there are crazy weather patterns and everything else, and in his world people have different kinds of abilities. So you can either be really good at seeing, you can be really good at hearing, you can be so good as you can smell people's tempers, so basically you can smell their emotions. It's almost like a kind of mind reading without actually mind reading. So he lives in the more fantastical world, and these two characters come into contact and everything takes off from there. So first let me talk about the world building. The world building I felt was really solid within the first book. You had kind of the two different kinds of genres mixed up in there, and I felt that they're both explained fairly well for a first book. I really enjoy the more fantastical elements, as is my nature, so the outside world was my favorite part of it, and the way that the powers are kind of explained, the abilities, for lack of a better term, are explained, were really cool and really helped with that world building. In the second book, the world building wasn't quite as strong. I felt like there were still things kind of missing as far as where everything was kind of located and what kind of was going on, but still you maintain those same elements of how the abilities were explained and how everything else and the tech kind of went. The last book is where I felt everything kind of came back together again, and you started to get more of a more complete picture of the world and how everything worked. I will say that I got an even better idea of how the world was after I saw some infographics on Tumblr that were released after the last book. I was able to go on Tumblr after reading the last book because they'd been released for a while, so you had all these infographics and things and maps, which I think would have been a little bit helpful within these books, especially in the second and third book, to have kind of maps and things like that, but overall it didn't affect my reading experience. I wouldn't say that I docked points or anything for the world building because that's not really what these books are about. So now I'm going to talk about the characters, and as you may have already kind of guessed, because it's kind of obvious when you have a two-person point of view, Arya and Perry are kind of involved at some point, and that is a lot of what the story is about. I wouldn't call the story a romance, but there is romance in it, and the romance element is a very strong component, that relationship element, even in a like platonic, not romantic sense. All relationships in this story are very, very strong. So when talking about Arya and Perry, I kind of have to talk about them together because they are so interconnected. They are different characters, their point of views are very different and very distinct, but they are the core of the story, and they are so connected and so great. They are the great part of the story. The characters in here are what make the story and what make it so addicting to me. Both Arya and Perry are very strong leaders in their own way. As I said, they have very distinct voices, they have very distinct personalities, but they are both very strong in their own right, and they complement each other very well. Also, a thing I really enjoyed is that the romance in here did not fall into the typical dystopian or just YA tropes. You didn't have a lot of predictability, there wasn't a lot of drama. It was actually very realistic for a situation like this, and nothing was overdone, and you didn't feel like you wanted to smack the characters because of how they were acting. At all times, I felt like their reactions to things were valid, and I wasn't screaming at the characters through the pages, which was really refreshing, because sometimes, at least in second books especially, you kind of have a romance falling apart, and while I'm not saying the romance was stable throughout, I'm not saying anything like that, but the things that happened to them happened for a reason, and their reactions were realistic and weren't overly dramatic. Also, the side characters in this trilogy are wonderful. Actually, Roar, who was one of the side characters in this, won my Best Male Sidekick category for 2014. I absolutely adore him as a character. I want a whole series in his perspective, honestly. I think he is amazing. I know there's a novella, so if you guys have read this series and read the novella, comment down below and let me know if it's worth checking out, because I'm very intrigued by that, but I don't want to check it out without knowing a little bit more about it, so if you guys have read it, help me out. But Roar is an excellent character, and he has a friendship with both Perry and Arya, and he is basically both of their best friend to both of them. And I especially love it with Arya because you have a male character, best friends with a female character, there's no love triangle, there's no romantic tension, they both love and respect each other on a very platonic level, and I just love it, and I want to see more of those kinds of relationships. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the plot. Throughout the series, the plot was very fast-paced. It is instantly addictive. When you pick the books up, you just keep wanting to read them. I actually took a break between the first book and the last two books. I read the first book in the summer and then the last two books in December. So I kind of had forgotten that element of them, and they are definitely addictive. You pick them up and you're already 150 pages in. It's crazy. You don't want to put them down. There's just something about them that just makes them so easy to read and so easy to fly through, and I absolutely adore them. Also, I don't find the twists predictable in any way, and I find the struggles that the characters experience across the board, all of the characters, are very realistic, are handled in a realistic way, much like the more romantic elements and the relationship elements I talked about earlier. So for a very fantastical setting, it was very refreshing to have the characters making very realistic decisions and having very realistic reactions to their environment. I will say that I feel like the series got better with every single book, and I felt that the conclusion was so satisfying and that everything was wrapped up in a, again, believable way, and it was just nice to have a finale that you're not left disappointed by. This finale is definitely very solid. So with that being said, I gave Under the Never Sky 4 stars, Through the Evernight between 4 and 4.5 stars, and Into the Still Blue 5 out of 5 stars. I would really recommend this series to basically anybody. As I said, it has elements for everyone: science fiction, fantasy, romance, dystopia, the whole shebang, really good friendships. It's amazing. I'm sure you can find something in here that you would really enjoy, and as I said, it's very, very addictive. I would definitely say this is a 5-star series. So comment down below and let me know if you have read the Under the Never Sky trilogy, and if you loved it as much as I did. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!